Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we'll have the latest from the live radar, run for the UKV, have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days. We are going to see another little cold incursion through the start of this upcoming working week through Monday to Wednesday. It is going to be pretty cold for most, with temperatures below average for the time of year, overnight frosts, and I said single digits, even low single digits by day. Now, we're not expecting anything too wintry, perhaps a few snow showers in Scotland, and once the cold air gets pushed away, there could be some transient snow over some of the higher ground in the north, but it just shows you the power of a very brief northerly wind and a bit of higher pressure. It can really keep it quite chilly for a number of days. After that, he's going to go westerly once again, fairly changeable as we head towards the latter part of this upcoming week. And as we'll see from the longer range charts, that is likely to continue at least for a few days, for as we head into the middle third of the month, it is looking likely to turn colder once again. It is looking pretty likely now we see a northerly wind coming in around sort of the 10th of December, probably by next weekend or sort of early the following week. That's when this northerly could start to arrive. It doesn't look like it's going to sort of dominate the pattern, but what will happen is that high pressure is going to take over, and regardless of how cold that air mass will be, it is going to remain cold and chilly because an inversion would likely take place. So a much colder middle third of the month is looking pretty likely. What establishes beyond that is still yet to be determined, but it is still looking pretty cold, chilly, and maybe wintry as we head into the lead up to Christmas. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, which you'd like, and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well. The link's in the description. Now, if you start on the live radar, we've still got this westerly flow coming in at the moment, and we have seen a transient weather front overnight last night into this morning. It's not a particularly intense weather front, and it's really dividing, mild air from less mild air. Nothing really too extreme. But it has given some heavy rain, and you can see in the far east at the moment, we're starting to see that heavy rain clear. Now, I'm recording this around lunchtime, around 1 PM, and you can see further west, so we've got a few showers pushing in, and this rain could pep up in the north and west as we start to see another change towards that much colder air mass into Monday. Now, do look at the temperatures at the moment. As I said, around lunchtime, and it is pretty mild across much of the British Isles. Temperatures well above average for the start of December. But as I said, it's not going to last all too long. And by tomorrow, by Monday, it is going to be much colder for all, as we do start to see a northerly wind pushing in. You can see up to our north, up towards Iceland, it is very cold. It is abnormally cold to our north this time of year. We've got a very big pool of very cold air sat towards Iceland, and it means whenever we see these northerly winds, they're likely to be a bit more intense by a couple of degrees than they usually would be. And that is why these sort of very short-term, very last-minute northerly winds that really don't look anything too much within the synoptic pattern, they actually do deliver something very cold, and that's because that air to our north is exceptionally cold for this time of year. All due to the fact that November, especially during the second half, was pretty chilly, drawing a lot of cold air out of the Arctic. When we see a very mild southwesterly dominated November and October, it can mean that that sort of area around Iceland is very mild, especially the sea surface temperatures. And that means that any northerly is a little bit harder to bring the very cold air in. So the current setup of the North Atlantic just to the north of the UK is very much conducive of allowing much colder conditions into December. So that is one to watch. So if we do look at the latest UKV now, if we do start on the precipitation, you can see all that heavy rain clearing through this afternoon and just clearing to a few showers through the rest of this evening. There's more, as I said, substantial showers across northern and western Scotland, and that will eventually clear with a bit of snow in places. Now into Monday afternoon, that rain will eventually clear the far southeast, and then look at this, with pretty bright winds coming in from the north, a few snow showers in Scotland, but it is going to be very cold. Overnight temperature is going to drop away massively, and we'll be able to see those on the temperature charts in a minute. Now, pretty much from Tuesday, it's actually looking pretty dry. The weather front that is coming in from the west, trying to bring milder air back in, does take a very long time to push in. Eventually it does, and this is where we could see some transient snow, and we could still hold on to some cold air into Wednesday, where it is likely to still be a bit chilly, before we eventually see proper southwesterly winds arriving, pushing away any remnants of cold air by Thursday and Friday, where we could see lots of heavy rain coming in from the west. So turning a little bit wintry for a couple of days, especially in terms of the temperatures and frost, maybe a bit of snow in the north, And then it does go much more autumnal again with a big flat westerly flow to end the week. If we look at the upper air temperatures, you can see it's very mild at the moment, but into Monday, we do see that very cold air mass moving in from the north and the northwest. The -10 or -11 degree isotherm could push in for northern Scotland. Most other areas getting out to kind of -5 to -8. Now into Tuesday, it does persist, and we see this brief change in air mass, but it is still chilly into Wednesday, just not quite as cold, for it eventually gets all pushed away into Thursday. Eventually, it could return slightly into Friday as the next weather front clears. If you look at that max temperatures, you can see this afternoon, it is sort of 14, 13 degrees, really quite mild, good, sort of 4 or 5 degrees above average in most areas. However, into Monday, those temperatures will get down to around 7 or 8 degrees in the early morning, and they won't rise much through the afternoon, if not dropping by 3 p.m, where it is sort of 5 to 7 degrees at best, and getting close to low single digits in the north. As we head through Monday night, it's a very cold night, with widespread frost in northern areas and even southern areas where we see those skies clear. But again, it will depend on how quickly that precipitation and cloud clears through. Now, by Tuesday, look at this, only kind of 2 to 6 degrees at best for most, very cold, a bit milder further westwards, but for most, especially in central and eastern areas, it is very chilly. And even into Wednesday, it is going to be another cold morning, and by the afternoon, still only 6 or 7 degrees. And then eventually into Thursday, it turns milder for all by the afternoon, 13, 14, and it'll be similar into Friday. So very up and down this upcoming week, but a brief taste of something a little bit more wintry, but for most, it's just going to be a bit of frost and cold conditions before it does turn a little bit more mild towards the end of the week. If you head over to the GFS, we'll be able to see there is the risk of something more substantially colder as we head into the middle of the month as a result of higher pressure returning. Now, over the coming days, you can see the brief northerly wind, it really isn't much, but because we've got so much cold air just to our north towards Iceland, it actually allows this very cold air to get drawn in pretty quickly before getting pushed away. Beyond that, though, we do see a proper westerly flow, and we will see milder air coming back in off the Atlantic. And then this is what happens next weekend into the following week. See a pretty potent northerly wind arriving, and this could dominate through next weekend into the following week. Now, as I said, it's not a penetrating northerly. We're not getting the high pressure all the way up to the North Pole. What we are seeing is cold air moving in and then the high pressure toppling. As the high pressure topples among that colder air, we will likely see again lots of frost, maybe a few wintry showers, and then it's beyond that where we could see more significant low pressure systems affecting Scandinavia, and that would in turn affect the UK. And here we are starting to prime the pattern for a very cold northerly wind, lots of very cold air to our north and our east, and it is preparing the grounds for potentially something very cold into the lead up to Christmas. And again, I don't want to overhype it, don't say it's definitely going to happen, but the signs are definitely for something much chillier to evolve, and you can see this by a much colder pattern there through much of northern Europe. It does look very cold, and a lot of that air could be heading our way. All depends on how this North Atlantic pattern evolves. If this high pressure gets going, holds on, then we could see something very cold. If it topples, then it could be cold and wintry in the north. The south could be milder. We'll have to wait and see. Now, the GM is very similar over the coming days. Again, that brief northerly wind, but westerly winds returning. And eventually, as we head towards day 10, a very potent northerly wind arrives. Potentially a bit of snow with that. Definitely some frost with the upper air temperatures below freezing. And then eventually the high pressure topples. Again, not seeing anything remarkably cold for the upper air temperatures. But because it is under higher pressure, we are likely to see an inversion taking place. So actually, at the surface, it is actually pretty cold. Temperatures only 6 or 7 degrees by day. So yeah, upper air temperatures, very mild. At the surface, though, it's actually pretty cold as a result of that inversion taking place. Now, do check out the latest ECMWF. It's actually very similar to the GFS today, where it does go pretty cold and persistently cold in the long term. Nothing remarkable at this stage, but definitely showing the risk of something wintry and colder than average in the lead up to Christmas. So you can see the westerly flows continuing, that northerly wind, that potent northerly arriving as we head into next weekend, into the start of the following week. It does penetrate further northwards, this higher pressure, which means that north and northeasterly holds on for a good few days before eventually getting cut off. Now the high pressure doesn't actually topple over the top of us, it stays to our west, which continues to encourage these north or northwesterly winds, and right towards 360 hours in the extended range, the jet streams well to our south, and we are trying to draw in some very cold air from the north. It is very difficult. As I said, we've not got this big block towards southern Greenland or Iceland, which means that it does take a very long sea track, which means it will be moderated considerably, but it is, regardless, a chilly below average pattern there as we head toward the middle part of December. Again, I'll continue to draw back to our winter look ahead we did earlier this week, where all signs pointed to it being a very changeable middle of December, with the risk of something actually properly cold, unsustained, perhaps only coming in the final third. So I'm not too, surprised by this, seeing colder patterns, but nothing, blocked and sustained. That could be something that evolves in the coming days for potentially the week leading up to Christmas and the Christmas week itself. Now, if you look at the ensembles, you can see they are fairly on board with a persistently colder pattern, not necessarily snowy or wintry, but just generally below average temperatures. And you can see that from the ensembles here. You see it's very changeable over the next sort of 5 to 7 days. Above average at the moment, below average for a couple of days this week, then above average, and then below average once again, before it stays below average for a good 5 to 7 days, even out to the extended range, staying pretty far below average. You can see, though, there are no remarkably cold runs, no -10 or below, which tells me that there's no proper blocking up towards the Arctic or Scandinavia or Greenland, nothing that's not transient. As again, a proper block would draw in very cold Arctic air. This is cold air, definitely possibilities of wintriness, but not that proper, bitterly cold air that we can see when we get some proper blocking going. So again, we'll have to wait and see exactly how it does evolve, but definitely that sort of 8th, 9th of December beyond, definitely looking chilly, definitely looking below average, with the risk of potentially widespread frosts, widespread overnight temperatures below freezing, and the risk of snow. But again, nothing too potent at this stage, because again, it's mostly going to be high pressure dominated. Now, if you compare it to the ECMWF, it's probably very similar, a little bit more pessimistic in the longer term, which is something we have picked up on a lot over the past few days. Definitely below average, but just not quite as below average. Again, that's expected with more ensemble runs. We're expecting more deviations. And again, with more and more runs, you'd expect those deviations to be smaller when they're all kind of summed up. So the mean of the ensemble members we're expecting to be, not as much away from average, and that's exactly what we're seeing. Precipitation still remains low, so again, high pressure dominant, and again, below average temperatures, so looking pretty chilly into that middle third of the month. So we'll have to wait and see at the moment. Nothing too major on the horizon, but again, hints of colder conditions to dominate the next couple of weeks, with some milder interludes like we're seeing now, like we're seeing at the end of next week. But generally, chilly conditions do look favourable in that longer term pattern. Whether it be cold and wintry, we'll have to wait and see. That is something, as I said, that I think will be more exclusively towards the second half of the month, if at all, of course. And remember, we're looking at charts here still for the first half, and maybe just getting out into the middle third. So we're not actually looking yet at the period of time where I actually think there is a possibility of something colder, which is that second half of the month, maybe even around, coincidentally, Christmas. So we'll have to wait and see. It is something that will evolve over the next week, so I wouldn't be surprised if we're sitting here in 7 days' time, next weekend, and we're saying very cold weather is on the horizon. I would not be surprised if that came off, but I wouldn't be surprised either if we got to a week's time and we were just saying chilly weather into the lead up to Christmas, frost, fog, maybe a bit of snow. So we'll wait and see, but for the time being, changeable over the next week. You are going to need your waterproof coats. You are going to need probably hat and gloves as well. As I said, it is going to be pretty chilly out there, especially Monday through Wednesday. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.